guys. Welcome back to TMF-Warrior's weekly broadcast. We got an incredible show for you today. I'm so honored to have on an old friend. And today is, I'll share everyone. This is a story I've been waiting to hear for years. This is an incredible story about a man who almost died. Yes, Harold Wilkerson almost died, and of all places, the Twin Towers during 9/11. If you're sitting on the edge of your seat now and wondering, oh my God, what happened? You're going to want to hear this story.
Hank, thank you so much. And yes, it's been about, I'm just going to say 30 plus. I know there's some extras behind there, but we first met on a boat called the USS Hunley. I had just got back from Holy Loch, Scotland, where I was stationed there for a couple of years. And we actually came back via Nova Scotia, Halifax, Canada, back into Norfolk, Virginia. So I'm originally from Virginia, so I was really happy to be home. And yes, 9/11, it was a day where I would say that I almost died, but I didn't. I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to do this podcast. I actually woke up this morning really early and I couldn't sleep because I had all these thoughts like, it wasn't bad. I'm able to handle a lot of things, especially with the anniversary approaching. As it gets closer and closer, then I get a little bit like antsy. I need to get out to do stuff. I can't sit around home. But I would start off to say that particular Tuesday, September 11th, I just laid in bed. I didn't want to go to work. I remember the day before at the World Trade Center, they used to have these summer like concerts during lunch.
Right.
So at any given day out in the plaza, if you ever been to the World Trade Center, the old Trade Center, they had an area where it was thousands of people that would be out there at lunchtime. And I remember waking up that morning. I had to be at work at 7:30. I mean 8:30, excuse me. And I just laid there and I didn't want to go. But eventually I got up. I showered. My buddy, my best friend David, and you'll hear his name quite a bit throughout my story. I met him at the Grove Street Path Station. So our commute into Manhattan was maybe 6 minutes, if that, on the path. And we come into the Trade Center like we always do normally. We went to a place called Akbar where we always got our breakfast. Took the long escalator up to the concourse, walked across, went across a little bridge into Seven World Trade. And he worked on the 33rd floor and I was on the 45th, which meant I had to take an elevator to, I think, to the 40th floor, get off, and then take another elevator up further. I remember I shared an office with a lady by the name of Lorraine Jones, and she didn't start until 9. So she wasn't in. And I never forgot. I sat at my desk like I normally do. Now, my office at the time faced the Empire State Building, and my manager's office was to the left of mine across the corridor. It was across. I've gotten to work probably 5 minutes before I start. And I remember her coming out of her office around by like 8:45 or 8:44 or something like that. And she said, "Do you hear that sound?" And we're standing there just looking, but we could hear at the time, I didn't know what it was, but it felt like something was like roaring, like a big roaring sound of something. I went and sat back in my office, and at that moment, the first plane hit. So the plane literally went over our building into the building.
Wow.
Now, at the time, because we are facing the Empire State Building, we couldn't see anything. So to the right of us was another window. So we could see black smoke coming, and I'm 45 stories in the air, but I can see people just running. And someone said, "Oh, there was an explosion on top of the World Trade Center." Now, that's what they said. And I remember them telling us to go back to our offices, to our desk. I went back into the office and I called my mother. That was the first thing that came to my mind was just, I called my mom and she answered the phone. I think she was confused because she's looking at where I work and looking at all of this mayhem on TV, and I'm talking to her at the same time. But I remember being on the phone and I said, "Ma, I will call you when I get out." And I hung the phone up. And at that moment, the second plane hit.
So that plane literally flew right over you and smashed into that building. When that happened, did you feel like a rumbling?
When the first plane hit, the building did
Oh
like
my
it went
God.
like that, and everything kind of shook. But when I hung that phone up, the second plane hit, it knocked me in the floor.
Oh my God.
And at this time,
Mm.
the whole building shook. It did that zoom again, and then it rocked side to side. The lights were flickering, and when that building shook and went side to side, and the lights flickered, one of my colleagues, and I can't remember his name, but I can see his face. He runs on the floor and said, "Get out! Get out! Get out! They're running planes into the building. They're flying planes into the building." I grabbed my backpack, and I knew I had on a green polo shirt, and I had on some cream color khaki pants, and I had on some Dockers. I remember grabbing that, and I put my backpack on. And as I walked out the door, my arm caught the latch part that when the door closes, and it scraped my arm. So I walk around the corner, we go out the door, and the guy who was in the office next to me, I remember seeing his face. He got on the elevator. I wasn't getting on the elevator. My military training and everything. And I remember getting into the stairwell, and my colleague, her name was Rose Porcelli. I'm laughing to stop from crying. I remember this like yesterday, and people were holding conversations like, "Oh, we're going to have this meeting tomorrow." And I am thinking to myself, it's like 1,000 degrees in this stairwell. There's thousands of people, 45 flights that all have to go simultaneously down these stairs, and you're talking about a meeting.
Wilk, were
I
you on the highest floor? Were you on
Yes,
the
we're on side.
Wow.
All I kept saying was like, "Oh my God, I got to make it out." So at this time, I'm hoping everyone can grasp this. Your adrenaline has kicked in. Your building just shook side to side, so you have no clue what's going on or anything like that. But I want to say this: in that building was also the FBI.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you how long it took me to get down. I remember when we finally got to the 13th floor. They had some of us rest a little bit, and then we proceeded down. When I made it to the lobby of Seven World Trade, there's a long escalator that goes down, and there was undescribable things out in the street, and security was trying to hold us back, but we pushed past them. We went down the long escalator, and to the right of that, once we got out the escalator, now we're street level. And so you can't walk out the front door because all of the stuff is flying all over, the papers and
Mhm.
fire and all of this stuff. So to the right of us was the phone company building. And as I proceeded to walk out that door, I looked to my left and I looked up, and I saw this gaping hole. So now your mind is not comprehending what you're seeing. And all I'm thinking is, oh my God, they got so much work to do. And then as I'm looking, and the woman grabs me, so I'm looking left because the trade center is here. The woman is grabbing me to go this way. And she said, "Oh my God, do you see it? Do you see it?" And I kept looking, and there were people jumping.
My God.
And we proceeded to walk in between the two buildings. We made it in between the two buildings. And we came face to face with our manager. And I am sweaty, look like hell. And she was fully intact. She actually left us up on the floor. She took the elevator and left us up there. And I didn't really have too much to say to her.
Yeah.
So we left there and we walked up Greenwich Street.
Hey,
Um,
Wilk, let me ask you this. Did everybody that was in 7 World Trade, were they able to get out, all 45 floors?
I do believe there were no casualties. I will have to double check that, but I do know the majority of us made it out of there.
Is this one of the buildings that actually collapsed later,
It
or is
was the
this
last one to
Yeah,
fall.
yeah.
It was the exact last
I
one to
thought so.
fall
Wow.
on that day.
Well, that
As
shaking literally broke it apart.
Well, we also found
A
out that there
miracle.
was probably something else under it, burning at the time. He walked up to the main office, which was at 388 Greenwich Street, and that's in an area called Tribeca. I remember walking up that street, and I don't know how he saw me, but my best friend David spotted me in all of those people. We just like looked at each other, and that's when the first one came down.
Oh my god. But it take us through that. I mean, what
So
was
now
that like when you turned and saw this?
military jets are flying over us, and when that roar happened, it really scared me where I felt like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think or anything. We walked up Greenwich Street toward the PATH station on Christopher Street, which is the last stop in Manhattan.
Mhm.
So we're walking up there, the line to a payphone, and yes, they still had payphones, was long. As we are walking up Greenwich Street, I saw a lady sitting in a real office, and she was on the phone, and her window was kind of open outward. And I poked my head in, and I said, "I'll give you $20 if you let me use your phone." And she said, "No, no, no." And she buzzed us into the little area where she was. I guess she just looked at our face and said, "These guys just came from down." I know
Outside,
they
yeah,
did.
where they were.
And that's how I was able to call my mother, and my best friend was able to call his dad. And so we proceeded from there. We walk up Greenwich Street, we get to the PATH station, and we go down. Now, the PATH station is 3 levels below the ground. So think about that. So
Mm.
we get down there, we get through the turnstile. We're standing there, and all of a sudden, you hear this thing come over the PA system: get out, evacuate, evacuate. Mass panic
My god.
because now you
Because 'Cause
don't
you're
know
thinking
what
so
is
collapse,
coming,
right?
and I'm going to be trapped underground. I
Ugh,
won't be able to breathe. And so we get back upstairs, and then we gasp for air. We turn right, we walk to the West Side Highway. So as we proceeded to walk to the West Side Highway, we both think it was like, okay, let's walk to Chelsea Piers because sometimes they have boats and stuff like the Spirit of New York and things like dinner cruises. So as we're walking up, we can turn around and look, and it's just gaping black smoke and everything. Sirens, people are all in the street. They got the soot all over them. Just uttermost chaos. Traffic is everywhere. People are running. And we make it to Chelsea Piers, and the line was long. I said, "We ain't waiting on this. No, we're not doing this." I told David, I said, "You see that soda machine?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "We're going to go stand right there." And I said, "Soon as someone turned their head, we getting on this boat." And it was these two girls that was talking about other stuff. And when she turned her head, I grabbed David by the arm and pulled him, and we got on the boat. And the guy said, "No more people on the boat." But we got on the boat, and that was the most scariest thing. The water was calm, there was silence, no one was talking. You can hear the sirens, and you can see the black smoke that's happening.
how far from the boat when you're pulling away up from the pier and you're looking back, how far is that? About 2 miles, a mile?
It's not 2 miles.
Not
It's,
even that.
it's not even that because it looks very close, but I don't think it's 2 miles.
Mhm.
It could be like soon as the boat is pulled off, you can see World Trade Center. So you're watching it
Oh, you're
the
right
whole
there?
time.
Yeah.
The whole time you're going across. But you got to realize Chelsea Piers is at 23rd Street. So we've walked. I want you to think about this. We've walked from Lower Manhattan down underground, back up, and now we've walked all the way from there up to 23rd Street. All you hear is the engine of the boat. No one's talking on the boat. You hear the sirens, and you see black smoke. And there's eerie, the water is not choppy. It's just like you on a lake and you're just floating across. That was scary. So they took us to a place called Weehawken, New Jersey, which is right above Hoboken. We walked from there to Hoboken, and we walked across the would have been the traffic that goes into the Lincoln Tunnel
Mhm.
and everything. Now the Holland Tunnel, and there was no traffic. It was like a ghost town. And we walked from there, and that's probably almost a couple of miles. So we walked from there, we made it to my apartment, and we stood outside of because I lived in a brownstone at the time. We stood outside, and his friends came and got him. He went home, and I was upstairs alone for the first time since 7 something that morning when I
Yeah.
left.
Wow.
And I sat on my couch. I wouldn't turn the TV on. No, I actually did turn the TV on. And I'm just sitting there, and the phone is just ringing, but I'm not answering it. And then I saw and you remember back in the day, we had the call ID
Yeah, you could
box.
see who's
When it said Ma, MA, and when I saw Mom pop across the screen, I picked up the phone and I said, "I'm home." But like my voice is really tremly.
Mhm.
And I never forgot what she said. She said, "It wasn't your time."
Mm.
But I didn't really fully understand that because now I'm thinking of like, so it was everybody else's time who done died and like that's where my mind is. And she just said, God has a lot more for you to do. And in that same breath, she said, and pack your shit and bring your ass back home. This is from a five
Love
foot
it. That's right.
one, two lady who had 8 children. And so now I said, Ma, I said, I'm not leaving. And I said, I'll call you later. And then one of my sisters, my sister Joni, she called and she said, Lord boy, if anything had happened to you, that would have just broke mom and dad. I am,
Are you the youngest of all the kids?
no, I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
No, brother and sister.
So I'm number 6 out of 8. And so my oldest sister's 70, just to put it in perspective, and I'll be 59. Kind of, and she was like, "Oh my God, if something had happened to you," and she gets really, I wouldn't say overly dramatic. Whatever she's thinking comes out of her mouth and saying like there would have been no body, we wouldn't be able to have a full like closure. Like she is like now really
Yeah.
going after it. And I just sat there and for the longest kind of time, I remember after that, we didn't go back into the city for like a week. And then they had us go into, it was up by Madison Square Garden. They had an additional building. And I never forgot, everybody on the trains were like, people were like looking at anybody who was Indian or
Middle Eastern. Yeah,
Pakistani,
or
Middle
Middle East. Yeah.
Eastern. People are pushy and everything. And it took every bit of what I needed to even go into New York or to get on a subway, to go underground, to do any of that. And I remember they offered at the time counseling. And I could not tell you if my buddy David did any of that. I know that I initially did it. I didn't find it very helpful at the time, maybe because I didn't know a lot about it and I didn't really want to talk about what I just went through. So I did what everyone else did. I push it. I buried it. And I'm thinking that by doing that, if I don't have to think about it, nothing, nothing would happen. So for years, that's what I did until 24 years later, on March 17th, 2020, my best friend passes away. Well, it's
David.
actually 19 years later. I'm sorry.
David
He
passed away.
passes away of COVID.
Oh man.
And I was the
Sorry to hear
person
that.
that found him.
Boy.
And when that happened, it unlocked a chest. And I eventually had to get therapy. And she described it. She said, with that trauma from 9/11 that and other things you probably been through in your life, like childhood and stuff like that. She said it suppressed everything, you pushed down everything. And that one thing unlocked a chest. And she said, just think of it as balloons are now coming out
Mm.
and you're trying to grab them and you're trying to put them all in
Wow.
and stuff. And now you have anxiety, you have depression. I had a panic attack. I got dizzy in my house. I didn't know. And that's what all of that was from. And I had no idea about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then when I felt like the thing that really had me a hard time enjoying New York like I always have, I knew David for the length of time I moved here,
Yeah.
32 years.
Yeah.
So that was hard. And then a few years later, 4 more years later, then my mom passed. Now that was a lot, that was difficult because now the 2 main people that I went through this with are no longer with me.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna when you were on the boat and you were turning around, you were looking obviously at the smoke billowing. I'm looking at a map right now of where your building was. Did you see the second tower fall during that time, or did it
yeah,
happen
yeah.
later?
And
Oh my god. So
so
you were literally heading in the water over to Jersey side,
I
and
think
here
it
comes the other
happened
one.
probably when I was home. The building that I was in, Seven World Trade, I was watching it on TV.
Yeah.
I remember when that fall, and that I
I
actually
remember that.
cried. I
Yeah.
actually cried
That was your
because
building. It was your
that was my
building.
building, and I realized at that moment how fortunate I was and everything. And I want to say this is when I went through all of this stuff. It's not like I never believed in God or any of that stuff. When my mom told me that He has more for you to do, I took it as if, okay, I need to start going home more often And a good friend of mine he's now a deacon in the church in DC and stuff like that. He used to just talk to me about scripture, different things, and he'll send me stuff. Read this or read that, and I just decided from then point on that to I needed to put God first in everything that I tried to do. The anxiety, the depression, like I didn't realize that until the first time I drove home after 9/11, going across the Delaware Memorial Bridge. They thought I was having a heart attack. I was having an anxiety attack. I made it across and I swore up and down I would never ever do that again. So I had, and to this day, I still battle it. Now, for me, flying, it took a good friend of mine who was in charge of the Navy in Battery City, Patrick Burns. He was a Navy rep at the time. And I remember he had to go to London. This was 2 years after 9/11. He had to go to London. He was like, "You should come, buy the ticket, and you should come." And I remember 2 years, it took me 2 years to get back on a plane for me to fly. And I was like, for all places, I'm flying across the pond. Like, could you picked
Yeah.
anything like Boston or something? And I actually did it. So I am still a nervous flyer. I really have to convince myself like, okay, this is a good thing. You can do it and go. Elevators, I don't like being in elevators. If it's really, really crowded, I will get out because I feel like I'm being, and it sounds weird. You think I would do that if I'm in an elevator by myself, but I don't really like being in tall, tall buildings. So I'm very conscious of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So if you invite me, it's like, "Oh, we work on the 33rd floor." Not coming. I'll meet
Yeah.
you in the lobby.
You'll meet you in the lobby. I
Yeah.
was gonna
So
that's incredible. I had a question for you. I was thinking about
yes.
this while you were talking about your faith, and, that was your anchor during your dark times following the death of David and your mother. And for someone who might be struggling, well, with their own faith after they experience something very traumatic, obviously only one 9/11, but the death of a person, horrible situation. For someone who's struggling through a traumatic event, how did you find strength and meaning in yours? And how did you believe it helped you to move forward, your faith?
Watching my mom, it really was. Like I said before, I never really brought up 9/11 around her at all. But I watched her faithfully. She went to church faithfully. She prayed for us faithfully. I saw the difference in her. I'm getting all teary eyed just thinking about it, but I saw the difference in her the first time I actually made it home after all of this.
Mm,
And the look that she gave me, and I knew that it was something about me that I had to change. It's not that I was a bad person. Hank, you knew me. The way I am now, Chuck, you may not know it, is the way I was back then. I've always been, I don't think I've ever changed. I just never let people know what my faith was because, sometimes when you share that with people, I always feel you got to be very careful who you share stuff with because then you learn about what they actually,
yeah,
who they actually are. And you could like that person, but if you share something really personal like your faith, and they say something, you start seeing them in a different light now. Not that you won't be pleasant to them, but you'll start pulling back a little bit of the interactions you had with them. But I would think for someone who's watching this, I would say God's not going to leave you. He's going to help you get through this, but we got to be willing to put the work in, meaning that we got to call on him in the good times as well as the bad times for that strength that we actually
sure.
need to
Yeah.
make it from day to day. Now, every day I struggle. Some days are good. Some days are like, I know the anniversary is coming up. I can tell you on the 10th, the person that's going to reach out to me is going to be my older brother.
Mhm.
He does it. We talk almost daily. He's gonna ask me a couple of questions. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you having any pain? He gonna after that. My sister Joni, she's gonna call me at 11 p.m. like she always do on September the 11th because she always, oh my God, I
Wow.
forgot. Sometimes it's earlier than that, but she would just call and she would just want to talk, which is great. And I know that I mentioned I have other brothers and sisters. To them, it's just another day.
Another day.
That's how I am taking it. And yeah, it's very, very painful. It used to be really painful in the beginning
Yeah.
because I had no one I could turn to. and stuff like that. And I didn't want my mom to ever remember it, but she did.
Mm.
And she would just call and say, I was thinking about you today. And we won't, when people reach out to me about that day, they don't want to talk about that day. They just want to let you know, it's like, I know what this day is and I know
Yeah.
how it affected you. So let's talk about something else that may bring you joy. I'm just reading between the lines other than
Mhm.
that day. And that really, really means a lot to me. And a lot of people didn't know that I was in it, maybe because I didn't want to share that part about me or anything like that. But every day when I get up and I take a shower, when I look at my arm and I see those two scars, I'm reminded every day
Yeah, you are every day.
of that.
Wow.
And that's
Is
and that's my
did your
story.
mom I got a question. Did your mom ever know that the way that the rest of your siblings sorta didn't understand or were as
Oh yeah,
compassionate?
she knew.
Did she know that it affected
She
you?
knew. Yeah, she knew, but she also my mom had, God bless her, she will say, if they don't want to talk to you, she always had this saying, don't ask me what it means because I don't know. But she always say things like, if they don't want to talk to you, there's no skin off your nose.
There you go.
Something to
Yep.
that effect.
Yeah.
Or
Don't let
and
it
then
bug
she'll
you.
say they don't pay your bills, they don't buy you food. And she
Which
said,
is
don't
funny because 'cause they're her very own children, right?
yeah,
But she has
but
to play referee. She had to play referee. Yeah.
she was the type of person that will tell you, and she'll say, Harold, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And she always said, she said, don't worry about that. And I used to, Mom, but she said, don't worry about that. And now that I'm older, I don't worry about it. The people who reach out to me, they know what that day is about. That's that's Harold Wilkerson's survivor story.
Beautiful. Chuck, what do you think, man? Is this incredible or what?
It is. And maybe,
Wow.
so you give me maybe the grace of like a minute or two to answer your question, Will.
I'm here, no
I mean,
problem. Go
Hank,
ahead.
some of the things I was thinking about is you're recounting your firsthand story. I bet Hank would join me in people our age. We remember
Yeah.
exactly where we were when we heard about the
That's
plane
right. That's right.
hitting the first building. We didn't know what was happening and this and that, but some of the things I thought about, I mean, I can remember exactly where I was. I was exactly who we were with. We were watching on this little 5-inch black and white TV because it's all we could get our hands on. It was other things. It was how eerily quiet everything was for days. And we're in the suburbs of Michigan,
Hmm.
but there was so little traffic and no air. Remember, there was no air traffic for days.
Yeah.
And so even that, the skies were empty. It was things like that. But that got me thinking when you talk about the anniversary coming up, 24 years it's going to be.
Is it
So
really?
think
Yeah.
about that.
Hmm.
Now think about that means somebody who was 6 years old at that time is 30 now. So that means anybody 30 and under would really have no knowledge, no emotional attachment. So I'm thinking we got to talk to somebody who's at least 35 years old
Yeah. To
before
know.
they would have any real connection with that. So what does that mean? As I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, we have to understand that this was since Pearl Harbor, this was the most significant attack on U.S. soil
Soil.
since Pearl Harbor. So, but this conversation wasn't about this wasn't about the attack as much as it was the aftermath. Wilkes' story. What's that? What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say to our young people, especially, know your history. And we're not here today to talk about the military campaigns and all of that and this and that, but understand this, that saying, freedom isn't free, is so incredibly true. So please, to our young audience,
Yeah.
know your history, learn about 9/11, but to today's point, understand that while there was significant loss of life that day, the impact, like with Wilk, the ripple effect was in the many, many, many thousands, tens of thousands, generations now. But here's the celebration is we grew up at a time when if you went to a counselor, it was because you were broken. And there was a
Hmm.
certain amount of shame even that came with having to talk to a shrink. What are you crazy? Are you crazy? But and Hank or Wilk, what you were sharing about the process that you were going through, dealing with the emotions, and everything. I'm sitting here being thankful that the idea of seeking counseling, having someone to talk to, has been normalized. It's like we're all kind of
Yeah.
broken in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Good
so
point.
to Wilk's point about all this, we're talking now decades of time that he's wrestled with that day and what it means and how it shaped him. Our audience, I would say, celebrate the fact that there are a lot of resources out there. If you don't, I mean, like, and if you have a David in your life, man, don't let a day go by without appreciating that. And it's one of those things, man. Look at the people, look around for the people you love. And if there's one message for me coming out of this after hearing Wilk's story is make sure the people you love know you love them and appreciate them.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling, man, please say something to somebody.
Patrick Burns put me in situations where I had to talk about my 9/11 story. In the beginning, I hated it for him because I didn't like it. He said, you should do it and don't be ashamed if you have to cry or pause it or any of that. He said, just talk. So that's my story.
Well, it's an amazing story. I think we're all just so pleased to hear that you have the courage to share it for other men who have been going through their own traumatic times. For you men who listen here, and by the way, I want to encourage you men, if you've had a traumatic experience, if you've struggled, as Coach Chuck said, if you don't have anybody to talk to, we're not counselors, but we are coaches. And we definitely would love to hear your story. You can put it down in the comments section. We'd love to get your comment or just a story. Share a story that you went through. If it's a story of 9/11, write it out. We'd love to read it. We'd love to respond. Listen, we're trying to build a worldwide brotherhood of men who are honest enough to be real and raw so they can become rebuilt. And that's why we're doing this. And what an amazing story. We thank you, Coach Wilk, for sharing that. Coach
You're
Chuck, for
welcome.
sharing your insights too. And I'm blessed to know that you're still alive so we can put up with each other a few more years. We're all three about ready to turn 60. And as you guys remember in the book, The One Day Gift, we always talk about the fourth quarter. We're all getting ready to go in our fourth quarter of our life. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a great adventure. And we appreciate you, Coach Wilk, sharing that story. Amazing.
Amen.
All right. Thanks.